It's all over. The girl's at the top of that tower. She must be dead by now. Action! Halt! Action!
Hello and welcome back everyone. In today's video I am taking a look back at possibly the greatest light gun game ever created. Heck, this might be one of the very best arcade games ever created. It's certainly one of my all-time favourites, and this game is Time Crisis. This game gave a major FU to Sega and Virtua Cop in just about every way you could imagine, and didn't just push the boundary of what was possible in the light gun games, it totally smashed it to pieces. Time Crisis is a 1995 light gun shooter video game developed and published by Namco for arcades. It's the first installment in the Time Crisis series. The game differentiated itself from other light gun shooters of the time by incorporating a pedal that controls when the player character takes cover to reload and avoid enemy fire. Players have a limited amount of time to clear each section by defeating enemies. The addition of the pedal was absolute genius, as up to this point each and every light game that came before Time Crisis relied on the player shooting the enemy before the enemy shot at you. But for the first time you were in control of certain elements of your character's fire, and you could use a duck and cover mechanic, which not only avoided enemy fire but reloaded. The other feature of the duck mechanic that enhanced the gameplay was the fact the enemies moved and repositioned, so you couldn't just duck for ages and pop back up, but the timer also played a part in that as well. The game consists of 3 stages, each consisting of 3 areas and a boss battle. Each area consists of a series of gunfights in which players must defeat a predetermined group of enemies in order to advance to the next battle. Each area features a 1-minute time limit to begin with, which counts down during battles and transitions between each, and is only extended by clearing a current battle, defeating specific optional enemies, also providing a few extra seconds. To avoid running down the clock, the player must operate efficiently, shooting enemies quickly and hiding only when prompted to do so. Each playthrough sees the player given a predetermined number of lives, in which one is deducted when the player is hit by an enemy or fails to avoid being hit by a hazard in the current battle, with the game being over when the player runs out of lives or time. The arcade cabinet's light gun utilises a special memory chip to synchronise areas of the screen's image as the player rotates the gun around. The light gun also features a blowback function which simulates real-life gun recoil, which you would have thought would have caused outrage amongst parents everywhere. But I guess they had lost interest in saving their kids from video games by 1995, even though the games were getting more and more realistic year on year.
Action!
Let's start from the very beginning of the game and take a look at the intro. This intro looks more like a movie trailer than an intro. The cutscenes, the dramatic music, the cheesy 80s script and incredibly hammy voice acting, it's done its job very well at enticing the player into the game. Even as the game starts, you get another glorious movie style cutscene to set the action up. It's quite incredible the massive leap forward into the future Namco took with this game. And right from the very start, you can tell this game is very polished. I think these visuals are so much better than Sega's Virtua Cop. They seem a lot smoother for a start, and the enemies seem less rigid. The level layout looks far better too, with the Dr. Evil style of a villain's hideout as a backdrop. And even when you weren't playing this game, it was absolutely superb just being a spectator on this game. And I will get into a bit more of that later. The sound and music is absolutely amazing in this game. The sound effects are brilliant. The gunshots sound loud and very 80s action movie, and the explosions and screams of death just add to the whole immersion of the game. The music is really hard to talk about. There are just not enough superlatives around to describe it. It suits each action sequence perfectly. It sounds utterly amazing, and again, feels more like an 80s action movie.
Action! Action! Danger! Danger!
The playability is, well, I'm just going to say this. Time Crisis is the best light gun game I have ever played. Even today, I have not played one I think tops this one. Not even the sequels to this can top it. The addition of the pedal was just such a master stroke. Allowing the player to avoid enemy fire added something that was very much needed in this genre of game. And when you play older games like Operation Wolf, Mad Dog McCree, or even Virtua Cop, they really do seem so old-fashioned. Namco could have made the duck feature as a button on the side of the gun, but the pedal just seems so intuitive. And when you play the game, and as the camera moves you forward, or round a bend or through a door, you really do start to feel totally immersed in the game. And when I was taking a look back at Virtua Cop, I said Virtua Cop was more like an 80s cop TV show. Well, Time Crisis is a full-on 80s action movie. The main character, Richard Miller, feels more like John McClane than even John McClane. And in turn, you feel like John McClane as the game just absorbs you into the action. But not in the same way Tron did, thankfully.
Action!
There are so many great things about this game. The little cutscenes with no dialogue that push the scene along are great. Even the ones with the cheesy dialogue are just amazing and really put you into the heart of the game. Although some of the dialogue is really cheesy, like when Wild Dog says,
"How could you? You killed my boss. What do I do now? I can't let things..."
he should be thanking me there, as I done him a massive favour. Another great thing about the game that sometimes gets overlooked is the fact the cabinet was not massive for a light gun game, and so this would appear in loads of different arcades. I seen it in the Mega Bowl, the cinema, and in Booth's Enterprise. and I am pretty sure I played it in all of those places. It was hard to turn down the chance to play this game. It was so damn good.
Action! Action!
Having the foot pedal was a real leveller for me. I wasn't the best shot in the world, but in those days, I had pretty good reactions, which is the complete opposite of how I am today. But back then, I could duck and cover quick while positioning my gun for the next shot, and so I made pretty good progress on the game, but it still cost a lot to beat at £1 a go. But it was money well spent in my book. Time Crisis was like an interactive Die Hard game. The presentation, the visuals, the tunes, the gunfire and the cheesy 80s script. It is what I had always envisioned video games to be like back as a small boy with my Commodore 64. And I think it's pretty obvious. I freaking loved this game. This game was a massive success just about everywhere, and so all eyes were going to be focused on the PlayStation version. Namco had been releasing loads of their games onto the popular Sony Playstation, but would Time Crisis be any good? And how would it be played exactly? Firstly, the main question to address is how would the PlayStation version be played? Well, thankfully, it could be played with a light gun. Namco had bundled the game with a G-Con 45, so it could still be played with the light gun, but the connection was not as straightforward as you would think. The gun plugged into the controller port, and then this video lead plugged into this AV adapter. This additional video lead allowed the G-Con to synchronise with the console's video signals for better accuracy. The AV adapter was then plugged into the PlayStation and your TV, and the result was super accurate shooting each and every time. To get over the lack of a foot pedal, the gun used this red button on the side to simulate the duck and reload action, and the system worked very well indeed. But now, onto the game. And thankfully, the PlayStation port was just superb in every way. The visuals had taken a hit, but the rest of it was just amazing. Absolutely amazing. While the visuals did not look as crisp as the arcades, it was faithfully reproduced for the home and to a very, very high standard. From the trailer-like intro to all the cheesy dialogue and set pieces, this game was just an amazing port to the home.
Action! Action! Get him!
When I got this game, I had gotten rid of my small 14-inch CRT by this time, and had replaced it with a 28-inch CRT. I also had a cheap Goodman's home cinema unit. You know, the kind with the built-in amp, speaker and video stand. The sound off it was not brilliant, but when it was hooked up to the PlayStation, the sound was awesome and the atmosphere was superb. In fact, the atmosphere was so good that one night when I had a few mates round, I had this game running, and one of my mates was so impressed by it. The very next day, he went out and bought a PlayStation and this game just so he could play it. But he was always moaning that it never sounded as good as it did at my gaff. See the difference home cinema makes to everyday life? It's unquantifiable. Anyway, as it was a light gun game, the very pick up and play nature of the game meant anyone could have a go. And these mates spent literally the whole evening at mine taking turns each. And they finally discovered the joy of video gaming in their 20s and 30s. For me, the game was one of my best purchases on the PlayStation. The whole thing oozed quality from every gun wound and cutscene. I was so impressed with how good it was in comparison to the arcade. And once you got used to pressing the red button to duck, it did feel just like the arcade. But if you wanted to recreate the foot pedal, you could. All you had to do was use a joypad in the other port. But there was no way I was going to be stepping onto a PlayStation pad. With my clumsiness, it would almost certainly have led to a broken pad or even a broken toe.
Action!
Namco done an amazing job on the port, and were really establishing themselves as the best developer on the PlayStation. But as if cramming all of the arcade goodness wasn't enough, they even included another game mode. The special mode sees you take on another mission completely independently of the original mission, and while it's not really that different, to provide two different games was a real bonus. And the special mode stands up as a good game in its own right.
There! Fire! Action! There! Get him! Freeze! Fire!
The game sees you shooting a lot of bellhops and bellboys around a hotel as you search for Wild Dog's arms supplier, Cantaris, and that mode sports some branching paths depending on how well you shoot. If you shoot well, the easier mode opens up. If you make a right Cantaris of it, the harder mode opens up. Time Crisis was such a great game on the PlayStation that I kept coming back to it for years and years. The atmosphere in the game and all the action are really unlike anything else, and so few games have managed to replicate it. It's kind of hard to explain, but this game really did feel more like an interactive movie. The pacing of the action, the storytelling, the characters, the very cheesy dialogue, but all of it made for some very addictive gameplay. And the more you played, the better you got. This was probably due to the fact that enemies appeared in the same spot all the time, but you still had to be lightning fast to shoot them all in time, right? I think I have waxed lyrical long enough about this game. Time Crisis, for my money, is quite simply one of the greatest arcade games ever created. It managed to put the player into the heart of the action way closer than any other light game before it. The gameplay was super addictive, the music spurred you along, and the heroic action made you feel like a star. And I ask you, is there any other game out there that does that? If so, then please tell me, and I will give it a look. And that was my look back at Time Crisis. Simply put, you need to play this game if you haven't already. And if you like this video, then please do all the usual like, comment and subscribe malarkey. And stay tuned to the channel to see my playthrough of this game as I ask the question, how would Richard Miller do if he had a machine gun? And that's all from me folks. Thanks for watching.